All right, I just wanted to welcome everybody here to the 200th anniversary of the Spangled Banner. We have lots of guests here. We have the Nana soccer team. As well. There's 5 of them right here. And also we have some 4th and 8th graders from our Fort Greeley Middle School. And of course, my favorite high school, Delta High School, always here. This is being streamed on the World Wide Web, so people from all over the world will be watching this. And this presentation would not happen without Mr. Shannon. So, Mr. Shannon, make a round of applause. We have Lieutenant Colonel Brian Spees here. Big round of applause.
I actually dropped the screen and read this.
I'd like to thank the community members. It's a special honor that we have folks from across the state that are here to compete in an athletic event. And so if I'm accurate, is this fall in Alaska? Is there such a thing as fall in Alaska? Although the scenery is quite stunning and it's beautiful. So I'm especially excited that I was invited to come to the high school, not told, and I didn't have to report to the principal's office. So with that, this is particularly a daunting experience, but one that I'm going to relish. So what I find personally appreciative of being invited to do these kinds of events and allows me to brush up on some history. So for the students out there, you know, the old adage is understand history, maybe begin to repeat it. I think that's well founded. So for me, it gave me another opportunity to kind of provide the context around what exactly the Spangled Banner and the 200th anniversary means. So with that, I'll provide a little bit of that historical context. So this was authored around the War of 1812. We understood from a global context what was happening. You had the British Empire that was the preeminent world power that was in struggle for power with Napoleon's France. And so that was a lot of conflicts through a couple of decades there on the European continent. Well, this new little country, the United States of America, in about 1812, was frustrated that the British were impressing our merchant sailors in their service. And so what the British were trying to do is prevent goods and services being sold to the British enemy, the French. So they imposed embargoes and they impressed our sailors. And so we took homage to that. Did not like that. As well as the British were going to stem this new country called the United States of America and their western expansion. So all that's in the history books. I certainly encourage you to read that. And so that's kind of the global context. Within a regional context, we start with the War of 1812. And again, I talked a little bit about what the United States was doing, and the British were concerned worldwide, but in North America, they were concerned with our country and our westward expansion, and then trying to stem our world goods. And so we get to a battle, the Battle of Fort McHenry in 1814. This is where Francis Scott Key observed from afar the bombardment of Fort McHenry. And so it was a battle that lasted well past 25 hours. And at the conclusion of this battle, the Spangled Banner, our country's flag was hoisted. What that contributed to, what that signified, is that we were victorious. And so for me, personally experienced some engagements in some faraway places, folks that kind of see a conflict. I can certainly appreciate what Francis Scott Key was doing. And if you take it out of the context of a song and more about a poem that has 4 stanzas, what I'd offer to you and what I'd offer you to consider as the band that Elton plays, the Star Spangled Banner, I don't know if it's like all 4 stanzas, but at least what the 4 stanzas mean to me is something common that when folks experience battle. One is the first stanza, an observation. We lived through the battle, the flag was hoisted. But if you read the second stanza, I really think that Francis Scott Key was figuring out or trying to determine, well, what did it all mean? What does that mean? What do we conduct that action or that activity for? And then I think in the third stanza, if you read it, it's really a nod to sacrifice. It's a nod to the folks, the men and the women who were involved in that conflict and the sacrifice that they made. And so I think in the fourth stanza, if you read it, he finally comes to a conclusion that it's not about symbology necessarily, it's about precepts and the underlying bedrock. And so a couple, and I think his conclusion for this fourth stanza really comes to what he was driving at it. And I picked out a couple of key sentences that I think what all of this means, what the Star Spangled Banner means, what the flag means. And it says, then conquer we must, when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. So we can talk about symbology, we can get wrapped up in the words, how they're delivered, how they're not delivered, but I think the takeaway is that symbology means something. It's a unifying principle, but there's a bedrock beneath it. And our bedrock as Americans is that we do fight the honorable fight for the pursuit of happiness, for the pursuit of liberty. And this American experience is like one and no other. It truly is a unique experience in that we give no homage to man, to an earthly king, that at the end of the day, our rights are authored by something else. And that is the right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So with that, I certainly appreciate it. Muchas gracias. Bye.
We're going to play. This is how it's going to go. Move on to the THS drama class. We'll have our actors come forward here. Now, here's a photo here of the flag. This is well past 1840 when this photo was taken. So as you can see, it's parts of it have been cutaways, souvenirs. Someone cut a star out as a souvenir, but I want you to see the photo just to see how large that flag is. There's someone there standing for scale. So that's how big that flag was that they raised September 14th. Pretty big flag. So we're going to learn about, through the drama class,
how that flag was made and who made it. So we can have the drama class come forward here.
Almost every American knows the story of the National Anthem, the Spangled but not many know the story of the woman who made the flag that inspired the song. It's her story.
It was 1812. Colonel Armstead had just arrived at Fort McHenry to take charge.
At the time, France and Great Britain controlled the oceans.
Britain had started taking over American ships and taking sailors prisoner. People did not like this and were very upset by it. America declared war on British in 1812.
France and England were at war for 2 years, and after the war, they knew that the British would soon turn their attention to America. Everyone feared the battle was terrible.
Colonel Armstead had to get fore ready for battle. He needed a flag to sail over Fort McHenry so the British could see it from a distance.
What the colonel did not know is his request for a large flag was set into motion the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner, which would later become the national anthem.
So on the screen there, that's a picture of Mary Pickersgill. She's the seamstress. We're going to learn all about her here in Act 2.
Johnny, what do you have in your hand?
It's a letter for your mother from Colonel Armstead.
What does he want?
He wants us to make a flag for Fort McHenry.
What an honor. The townspeople must be talking about your flag making skills.
Yes, I told you're a very good seamstress, and that's why you're picked for this very important job.
And you can work fast too. I have taught you so well. Come from a long line of flag makers. Your brother's a good flag maker too. I am so proud of you. What else does the letter say?
He wants us to make a huge flag, 30 feet high by 42 feet long.
What a grand flag. I don't think I've ever seen a flag so large. I can help. I'm becoming a good seamstress, and our servants will help too.
He also wants us to make a storm flag.
What's a storm flag?
A storm flag is a smaller flag for flying in the rain.
A storm flag cannot be made of wool or it would shrink from the rain.
How much time does the colonel give us to complete the order?
He only gives us 6 weeks.
6 weeks is not a lot of time. But a big storm flag is not enough time. It will be an honor to have our flags flying in Fort McHenry.
Act 3, outside Claggett Brewery.
I found a place for you to put your flag at. Master at Claggett's Brewery said that you could use his warehouse.
He agreed to let us use the malt house?
Yes, he said it was his patriotic duty to allow such a grand flag to be built there.
We better get started. First, you'll need to stripes could be one piece of fabric, but the stripes are so large, it would have been impossible.
Look at me. I'm as tall as two stripes put together.
There must be thousands of stitches.
Experts estimate that there are 350,000 hand-sewn stitches in the flag that Mary made for Fort McHenry.
And can't you tell that the stars are able to be seen from both sides of the flag? I mean, it saves fabric and it makes the flag lighter.
I just measured the flag. It's 1,260 square feet.
Isn't this going to be too heavy to fly? Wool is a light fabric. It'll make it light enough to be the flag light enough to be able to fly.
Johnny, will you help me weigh the flag and then send it to the fort?
Yes. And how much are you getting paid for making this?
I got paid $504.90. In 1812, Francis Scott Key was working as a lawyer, but he wanted to join the fight for freedom.
He stopped being a lawyer and joined the war, and he helped with sandwich supplies.
In September of 1814, an American doctor was taken prisoner by British soldiers. Francis Scott Key took a small boat to meet the British. She negotiated for the release of the doctor.
They released the doctor and left the boat headed for the British and attacked on Fort McHenry.
It was raining that day, so they raised the flag over Fort McHenry.
British soldiers had to put 2,000 gloves, just staggered, lit up the fire and round and round.
Bombs burst, rockets exploded, and dropped into the ocean. The water was sprayed over the boat to the harbor.
It was a tough battle, but the Americans had it like they refused to surrender.
All night, rockets whistled and all night, bombs whistled and exploded in the air. Francis Scott Key was to tackle them.
Each time a rocket lit up the sky, the Texas was the American flag was still flying over Fort McHenry, and it was.
On the morning of September 14, 1814, the battle was over and the fight ended.
The colonel ordered his men to hoist the huge flag that Mary Pickersfield had made for Fort McHenry.
Now everyone would know that America has defeated the British.
So what we're going to have now is the Fort Greeley Middle School choir members are going to come up, and Delta High School choir members are going to come up, and we're going to sing the anthem, and we're going to have you stand and join us. So let's have our choirs come up front right here. And we'll be singing in parts. So if you want to sing the parts as well, you're welcome to. I'll be singing the bass line with the guys, and girls will be singing the soprano line and the melody that most of you are familiar with. Everyone rise and sing with us. Here we go. Choir, you can take a seat without talking. Okay, so I've been looking forward to this for a while. I really enjoy history and I enjoy music. So this was the perfect opportunity to combine those two things together. And I just want to share with you the history of the music of the Star-Spangled Banner, because it's like a lot of things in history, it's not quite as straightforward as it seems. So the music that we use for our Star-Spangled Banner, the tune is called Anacreon, and it came from the Anacreontic song, which was the theme song for the Anacreontic Society in London. Okay, you're scratching your head, you're wondering, what does that mean? Well, they were an amateur music club in London, and so what they would do is they would gather together and they'd listen to music, perform music together. And why the funny name? Well, they named their group after a Greek poet, Anacreon. So they called themselves the Anacreontic Society. And the music was written either 1775, 1776. We haven't quite nailed down exactly which of those years it was composed, but John Stafford Smith composed the music. And what they would do with the song is, this group would meet, and they'd listen to some concerts, then they'd have dinner, then they'd have a soloist sing this song, and that soloist would sing accompanied by a harpsichord. And a harpsichord, that's the precursor to our modern piano. And so it was sung by a soloist, and then the couplet, that last part of the Star-Spangled Banner, those last two lines, he would repeat it, and then the whole group would sing that together in four-part harmony. So I have a copy of the original song, so I'd like to sing it for you. And it's going to sound a little familiar and strange at the same time. This is the source material of where we got our song from. I'm going to do just one verse. They've got 6. I'm only going to do one here. This is the Anacreontic song.
Yon in heaven where he sat in full glee, a few sons of harmony sent a petition that he their inspirer and patron would be, when this answer arrived from the jolly old Grecian. Voice, fiddle, and flute no longer be mute. I'll lend you my name and inspire you to boot. And besides, I'll instruct you like me to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus vine. And besides, I'll instruct you like me to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus vine.
The song was never meant to be sung by a large group, and that's part of what makes the Star-Spangled Banner a little bit tricky for people to sing, because it's got such range, it's an octave and a half, there's a lot of leaps, it's a tricky song. And that's why it's tricky, because originally it was written to be a solo piece. And it became a popular tune, and people started writing parodies of it. Now today we think of a parody as something satirical and funny, we think of Weird Al. But parodies doesn't have to be funny, it can just be other words. And so it ended up traveling from London over to America, and people wrote parodies, but we didn't have the first political ones until 1793. And what's interesting about that is that they weren't even about America, it was about France. At the time, France was going through their revolution, and there was 2 groups in America. One group said, we should help the French out. They're sort of like us, they're wanting their freedom. And another group was saying, well, our government adopted this stance of not interfering in the affairs of other countries. So one group wrote words to that tune, and they called it for the glorious commemoration of the glorious 14th of July. And that was for the people that were pro-France. They were saying that's the date where they started the revolution. But then you had other people that wrote to Genet in New York. That's a picture of Genet. He was France's ambassador at the time. He was trying to get America to send troops and money over to France. And so into Genet to New York, they're basically saying, you need to go back to France. We're not going to help you. This isn't our battle. Shortly after that, we do start seeing American political songs. The 2 most famous from this period were from 1798. One was Song for George Washington's Birthday, and the other popular one was Adams and Liberty. And let me underline for you here. If you notice, it still has, it's a little tricky to see when it's that small, but it still has the original opening like the Anacreontic song. Instead of going da-da-da, it starts da-da-da-da-da. That still is there in that version. It has not been changed to the melody that we're used to yet. Okay, and then in 1805, we had Francis Scott Key wrote music to the Anacreontic song. But it wasn't the Star-Spangled Banner, it was When the Warrior Returns. And this was in 1805, and this proves a couple myths out there about the Star-Spangled Banner. One myth is that Francis Scott Key was tone deaf. And obviously that's not true because he sang this song in front of people publicly. And then another myth was that he wrote the poem and then someone else set it to music. This disproves that because he purposely set music to the Anacreontic melody. And so this proves that Francis Scott Key had the intent to write it to this melody and was not tone deaf. And I'm going to sing for you the 3rd verse of that, because what's interesting about When the Warrior Returns is you can sort of think of it as a proto-Star-Spangled Banner. Some of the imagery that he draws from the Star-Spangled Banner is present in The Warrior Returns. So this is the 3rd verse, and just to warn people, it's not exactly politically correct language that we would use today, but it's not super offensive either. Here we go.
In the conflict resistless each toil they endured, till the ghost fled dismayed from the war's desolation, and pale beams the crescent, its splendor obscured by the light of the star-spangled flag of our nation, where each radiant star gleamed a meteor of war, and the turbaned heads bowed to its terrible glare. Now thee mixed with the olive, the laurel shall wave, and form a bright wreath for the brows of the brave. Now mixed with the olive, the laurel shall wave, and form a bright wreath for the brows of the brave.
He's using the stars, he's using the phrase the brave, and he's done that for some people in Washington, D.C. Okay, so then, like the drama class says, September 14th, he wrote Defense of Fort McHenry. And some men say that he was a prisoner on board a British ship. That's not the case. He was on his own ship, an American troop ship, and the British agreed. They said, yes, you can have him stop your back. And they let him go on the ship, but they said, but we're going to have to tether you here because we don't want you to go back and tell everybody where we are and what we're about to do. So he was actually strapped to this non-combatant British ship for the whole bombardment of Fort McHenry. And so he would watch, and the British outnumbered the Americans, and he wasn't sure how the battle would end. And the night of the 13th, it was raining and stormy, and so he could only see when the munitions were firing overhead. And then the fighting stopped. That next morning, September 14th, he went out on the deck, and he looked through a spyglass and saw that they had raised the garrison flag, and he was so inspired that he wrote Defense of Fort McHenry. Now, he wrote it on a clean sheet of paper. Some of the myths say that he wrote it on the back of a letter or back of an envelope. That's not the case either. I don't know where these myths come from, but we're going to end them right here and set everyone straight. So this is a handwritten copy that he wrote. It's not the original. The very first draft that he wrote was actually lost to time, but this is a very early handwritten copy that he made of his draft. And those of you that are quick spellers, you may have noticed he uses the archaic word of defense there. Okay, and then it was published as a broadsheet. A broadsheet is where you just have the words and you say, use this melody. These were printed in newspapers and magazines. And as you see that it says tune, use Anacreon in heaven. That was another name for the Anacreon tune. And again, you've got the archaic spelling there. Then later in 1814, we don't know the exact month, it just says fall in the history books. It was published by Carr's Music Store in Baltimore, and they changed the name to the Star-Spangled Banner without a hyphen. I couldn't figure out when we added the hyphen to the pronunciation of it. But it also mentions that the tune came from Anacreon. So that song, once it was published as sheet music, became very, very popular, and it sort of cemented Americans' view of this Anacreon tune with patriotism. And so we quickly see that you get these different renditions of it where people would modify it and use their own words. So in 1840, William Henry Harrison, his presidential campaign changed the words. In 1843, the temperance movement changed the words as well, and instead of "Oh, say can you see," they said, "Who can see now?" And then it goes on saying, "The drunk man in the street who's not providing for his family," and so on and so forth. And so they used the song for their movement. Then in 1844, the abolitionists started using it. And I just wanted to read the final couplet that they had because it's very haunting and it points out the hypocrisy at the time. The final couplet they had was, "And our star-spangled banner at half-mast shall wave, o'er the deathbed of freedom, or the land of the slaves." So really getting in there saying, how can we say that we're the home of the brave and home of the free when we're enslaving people? Then you started having translations into other languages. 1861 was the first published one, and that was in German, and that was pretty popular with the immigrant community. And in the Civil War, both sides took claim to the song. Both sides felt that they were American, both sides felt that this song was theirs. Both sides altered the words as well. So the Union changed it to "Our Country's Free Flag" and had a whole different set of words. The Confederacy did the flag of secession. So, up until 1917, it sort of became the de facto anthem for the United States, but it was never officially recognized by anyone. On January 8, 1917, the military adopted it as the national anthem. And so that would be if military bands were at public events and things like this. This still did not pertain to the public. So what they did is they got a committee together and said, okay, we got to decide which version we're going to play. And they got some band members from the Army and some engineers together, and they came up with the service version. And they published that in 1918. And that's what the band played today, was the service version. It was endorsed by what is now the National Association for Music Education. And the reason why I like using it for the band is that it works well with small groups. And the military says you can only play 2 keys, A flat and B flat. So March 3rd, 1931, that's when it officially became the United States anthem. So President Hoover signed it into law, H.R. 14, and it made the Star Spangled Banner our national anthem. This is a picture here of the flag that flew over Fort McHenry. This is from the Smithsonian. As you can see, it's got pieces missing that over the years, people cut as souvenirs. The Armistead family actually owned this, and they gave it as souvenirs. It wasn't until later that it became a national treasure for the Smithsonian. So even though it was made the national anthem, there's no official version. If you look up the laws, 36 U.S. Section 301, it just specifies the national anthem is the Star Spangled Banner. It doesn't tell you what key to play it in. It doesn't tell you you need to use all the words, all 4 verses. It doesn't say what harmonization you need to use. So that's really opened us up as Americans to get a lot of freedom. Because other countries, they've just got the one version they play. The harmony is all the same. So because we've got that freedom, we've been able to have a lot of great renditions through the years. If we had an official version, we wouldn't have been able to have Jimi Hendrix rendition, where he's got guitar amplifiers mimicking the sounds of rockets and bombs, really doing a tone unity. We wouldn't have that with an official version. We wouldn't have American Immigrants' Igor Stravinsky's version. The harmonization he does is very lush, romantic, and we wouldn't have a lot of people's personal favorite, Whitney Houston's version. Who remembers the 1991 Super Bowl? All right, a couple people. That's what a lot of people regard her performance as one of the best performances of the Star Spangled Banner ever. Whenever anyone else publicly performs it professionally, you always hear the commentators comparing that person to Whitney Houston. That she did the best job. Here's the problem. She didn't do it the way Francis Scott Key would have. The song is in 3. Oh, say, can you see? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Whitney Houston changes the meter to 4. She goes, oh, say, can you see? Does the whole song for you. You can look it up on YouTube. She changed the whole meter of the song. That dramatically changes the music of it. But people like it. It makes it a little dramatic. It drags some phrases out. It's sort of like comparing a Model T to a modern Ford F-150. They're both Fords. They both have 4 wheels. But just looking at them, you can tell that they're a totally different beast. But by not having an official version, we're able to do that. She's able to change the meter, change the tempo, change the melody around. And then we wouldn't have our newest one here, John Williams, the film composer. He's from Jurassic Park, a lot of people's favorites, Indiana Jones, all that. Well, this summer for the 200th anniversary of the Star Spangled Banner, he did a brand new orchestration of it. A very orchestral, lush, emotional version. He doesn't follow what Francis Scott Key had in mind when he wrote the word show. He uses a lot of rubato. That's where you stretch out the music and speed it up to adjust. He makes phrases longer. He He does a completely different harmonization than what people use when Francis Scott Key did the music. And so if we had the official version, he wouldn't have been able to do that. So without an official version, how do you choose what one to do? Well, the way you can choose which version to sing is based on who's performing it and where you're doing it. So with my band, for the band, we use the service version because it works well with a small group. Other schools with bigger bands, they use an arrangement by John Philip Sousa. It's a little more brassy, a little bigger, a little fuller, takes advantage of all the instruments, whereas we've got a more simple paring down. Nothing wrong with that. When I was in college, I used to sing the anthem for ROTC events, and I did my own version of it. I slightly modified it instead of going, and our flag was still there. I tweaked it and I went, and our flag was still there. Different melody than Francis Scott Key had, but they liked it, and it builds into that final couplet. So it's whatever vocally you're comfortable with, what your instrument at, and then also your audience. So when it comes time to choosing the anthem, the real important thing is not what version you use. It doesn't matter if it's a service version. It doesn't matter if it's a translation. It doesn't matter if it's your own. What matters is your intent behind it. Are you singing it as an expression of your love for your country? That's the key point. The music, and I know it's weird to have no music teacher say that, but the music's not important. It's really your heart behind it. Are you singing it to celebrate our country? And so, when we sing, and we're going to have the choir come up, we're going to have the whole audience here, we're going to have the band playing, we're going to have the choir going, and we're going to all sing it together. And I need to hear each and everybody out here singing, because everyone out here has a voice that needs to be heard. Everyone out here has a song that's waiting to be sung. Let's have everyone stand up. Everyone out here matters. Because as America, just like it says on our great seal, out of many one. That's where we're going to be here today. We're all different here, but we're all going to come together for a common purpose here. So let's have the choir come up front. Both choirs, the Fort Lily Choir, the Delta Choir. We're going to have a band there. And we need everybody singing. Everyone's voice is needed and important. Hey, band, you're going to give us our starting notes. Okay, that's our starting note. I'd like to thank you all for coming. The event we did here is part of a much larger thing. Schools, museums all across the country are doing this event in celebration of what happened this coming Sunday on September 14th. And as you can see here, even Maryland is getting ready. Saturday they got a football game. They've got special helmets with Fort McHenry on it and the lyrics that Star Spangled Banner on. What we did here is something greater, something bigger than what we are here. It's collectively, as Americans, all our individualities, all our diversity comes together, and that's what makes us a great nation. So thank you so much to the military that came, to the public that came, the visiting schools, thank you so much for joining our event. I'd like to thank Fort Gurley Band and Choir for coming and playing with the high school band and choir. I'd like to thank the drama class for performing that skit for us. And don't just run off right away though, because our history classes have prepared a couple different projects for you there. So check that out, don't leave right away. They worked hard on that. And thank you so much for coming here.